back again. Westmarch Workshop. I've been grinding my whole life, 9-ball. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so season's 3 here and there's no need to fear playing Barb. I'm so sure that I've got perfect gear and my friends all play classes where I give them passes cause most of their Paragon levels are tragic. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, hold on. Yo, I need blues, give me magic, I turn into dust. Cause these braces from Malthill's a must. I'm fully equipped in all ancients, but don't you go getting impatient. I'm climbing them greater rifts, I know you've been waiting. Actually, hold on, there's something else I want to talk about. Yeah, her complaints about cheats, now their band are rolled back. They like working at Walmart, your prospects are whack. Not sorry for hating, you deserve what you got, cause these blood shirts are free. Yeah man, I got a lot. You know? Alright, let me lay off them. Anyway, back to the facts that you need to know. Westmarch Workshop, #1 Diablo show. So let's get into it. Alrighty then. Yeah, that was my intro for this week, episode 48. We're climbing up there.
We're definitely.
To Hellfire and Back is the name of this one, and that will become apparent at some point during this episode. But as you could tell from the intro, there are just a lot of things to talk about, despite there being a lack of news. You know, from things happening in-game, to ideas happening outside of the game, to actions and repercussions received, etc. We're going to talk about it all. So, my good friend 9-ball, how are you doing, man? Good to see you,
I'm
man.
doing pretty good. It's good to see you too, man. How about yourself?
You know, I'm doing well. There've been some things that have happened since we last convened, but yeah, we can get into that at some point, I suppose.
Yeah, some tales of woe and sorrow from what I'm told.
A little bit of woe.
Yep. Seems this is going to be 2 weeks back to back. Sad.
Yeah. Are we losing credibility or gaining credibility when these things happen?
I don't know. It's hard to say. If given the community, probably gain. Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah,
gaining credibility
because they're so cool and hardcore. And I guess that is a fair lead-in to talk about the week in gaming. I'll lead off by stating I died. My barbarian was doing pretty great, doing really well. I had cleared, last I checked, a greater of 47 with little to no problems, and was looking forward to experimenting with some different setups and things like that. Was speed farming a whole bunch of greater of 40s. And I actually got to the point where I speed farmed it so fast, I made a greater of 50 key on the Earthshoe choices. You can level up your gems, you can upgrade your keystone. And so when you clear it, I believe like faster than 3 minutes, maybe faster than 2 minutes 30, you go up to 10 levels. So I was like, ooh, a 50, that's cool. And I was like, you know what? I think I'll make more of those. So I tried to do something a little experimental in the trials. And that is where I died. So it actually feels even worse than normal because I know that trials will be removed at some point in the future. So at some point in the future, some defunct, non-existent feature will have destroyed that beautiful barb. And I'm just like, there was no need for it. I wasn't even going to do 50s anytime soon. So, but we rebuilt. Rome was not built in a day or 2 weeks, or the first 2 weeks of season 3. So expect some deaths here and there. Rebuilt it back up, and I think it's looking all right.
Yeah, it's part of the experience. You know, you always go through. You never want to, but you always have to, in the back of your mind, realize that the character is gonna die.
Yeah, and it's like you always say, right? Like a hardcore character is created to die, or something like that. I forget your famous quote.
You know, I forgot my famous quote.
Well, it's a really good one if we ever recall it.
Yeah, something along the lines. It's like there's only one thing that all hardcore characters share in common. They all die.
Yep.
It's death is the goal of every hardcore character. Something like that.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
What is dead can never die. I know people like to throw that around for some reason.
How can you kill that which has no life?
Ooh, deep thoughts.
Yeah.
But with every tale of woe, there is also a tale of happiness on the other side, because that's the yin and yang of things. And I'll let you take a bit of the work on this one, but I will just introduce it by saying that we did it. We got the speed racer done.
Yes, that we did.
Last week after the end of the show.
Yeah, that was, we were going and talking about on the show, it's like, should we go and do it? Or maybe it was we were talking about it during the after show. It's just, should we give it a shot? It's like, why not? So just kind of, gathered up a couple people that were there, 3 days, and Altair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was just some clan members that 3 days we'd already been discussing with, and he had put some attempts in with us previously in season 1, and then Altair was just there, hanging out in raid call, and was like, we need a fourth person. It cannot hurt, regardless of if you've ever tried it or not. So we went and threw him an invite and just gave it a shot, and lo and behold, we went through and did it. So all of my bragging of I'll show you all how it's done ended up I didn't lie, apparently.
You did not lie.
No. So
that part kind of makes me mad that you literally came in, it was your first attempt of the season, and you're just like, this is easy, why are you guys failing at this? And but that's just the luck of the 9-ball, huh?
That is, because there was a couple of times, especially once we were in once we hit Battlefield of Eternity, it's like I had a homing beacon or something like that. So I started going off in one direction and found one of the siege runes that was like the furthest off on the other side of the map, and I just went straight towards it. And then when we got into Pandemonium Fortress, I just took every single right turn, and so we got through Pandemonium Fortress 1 in like a minute and a half.
It's really cool when it just starts to click like that.
Yep. So
I definitely recommend to anyone who hasn't yet attempted it, get a group together. It's actually a lot of fun just because there's the high pressure level of it. You're always watching the time. You're talking to each other, and it does get kind of emotional when you're like getting down to the wire and you kind of feel like you're getting close, but you're not sure, and you're like, come on man, take the right turn, like TP on me. But yeah, there's a video up on that if you guys want to check it out. Same place we post these episodes. So definitely give it a look, see if you want some tips, hints, tricks.
Yeah, and it is shorter than one of our shows because by nature it's only an hour in length. So
I didn't even think about that. That's actually hilarious.
Yep. So that's why they pay me the big bucks.
There you go. Big brain. Yep. Big brain, big bucks. So how was your week in gaming, sir?
That was the crowning achievement. So my week in gaming kind of peaked immediately after last week's episode. As bad as that sounds, but no, things at least on the real life side. I'm in between jobs at the moment, so I've been spending a lot of my time going through filling out applications and just trying to find what's the next chapter in my professional career there. So haven't been able to devote too much time to the game lately, but yeah. Still getting on here and there, running a couple rifts, running some bounties, just still trying to put my Natalia set together. I have a lot of really good pieces. It's just more, I need to farm up enough Forgotten Souls to actually just, go and re-enchant everything. Because as I said last week, I used up all of my white mats, all of my Forgotten Souls, re-enchanting my backup gear after my first Demon Hunter died, and then lost the second one. So we've got back-to-back deaths on the show here. But I hope that we break this chain. I don't want to have this discussion next week.
I don't want to see you in my office again.
Don't let it happen again.
I'm hoping that we're just getting it out of the way early so we can cruise through the rest of the season.
Oh, definitely. Just get it done now, and then no more deaths for the rest of season 3. That'd be great.
Wonderful.
Yep. But how about yourself? Besides, going through, obviously you had the Speed Racer achievement, you had the death there. How have you been recovering from that?
The recovery went pretty well. I went through my gear and saw my stash, I should say, and saw kind of what was left in the shambles there. But because I had been farming pretty decently prior to that, just the power of the barb to carve through T6, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later, makes it so that you can really just clear out a whole bunch of those rifts pretty quickly, and then that in turn feeds you more keys for the trials, and then that in turn feeds you a whole bunch of whatever trial or whatever greater rift level you want to make. So the 40s were right around that sweet spot of what I could farm pretty quickly, and gave you a great chance for ancient items, because as most people should know at this point, the higher up you go in Greater Rifts, the more likely the drops that you get at the end of those Greater Rifts are to be ancient. And it also, there's a bit of a correlation as well, as the higher up you go in the Greater Rifts, the more legendaries tend to drop. And that's not to say every single time, because there have been times where I've done a Greater Rift 40 and I got 0 legendaries, but more often than not, you're probably going to average 3 or 4 or so.
Yeah, those are definitely the rare instances.
When you come away with nothing.
Yeah, I this actually reminds me of back in season 1 when Dat Mods was going through and like doing like the math hammering and running like chain running 4-man group Greater Rift 35s, to try and see how many blood shards am I getting? Is it worth farming Greater Rifts? That was the question back in season 1. Is it actually worth farming Greater Rifts for something other than leveling up your gems? Is it actually worth doing to try and get gear? And obviously the power creep has been so much now that the answer is just yes. It's like you run rifts just to get trial keys. Like the Torment 6, you kind of run them just to get trial keys or to get crafting mats.
It's honestly worth talking about, actually, because if you look at what has occurred with Greater Rifts throughout the course of the last 3 seasons, so, season 1, season 2, and our current season, they've been slowly getting buffed. If you look from the changes from just the introduction of season 1 to that patch that came right at the tail end, that was when they bumped up, or I think it might even been a hotfix along the way, but they bumped up the rewards for blood shards coming from Greater Rifts, because that was one of the major complaints early on was, it takes me longer to do an equivalent Greater Rift than T6, and I'm not getting more blood shard reward for it. It seems kind of crazy. So they bumped that up. And then in season 2, of course, we saw everyone blitzing crazy Paragon levels, going higher than they had in such a short season as well. And so it was clear that the experience formula had been buffed up for Greater Rifts. And now we're at the point where you get much more experience, especially when you're in a group, and you can clear them quickly. You're getting a ton more blood shards, and then you're getting a decent amount of guaranteed legendaries to some degree. So it really is kind of the place to be right now, at least early in the season, when you're not necessarily pushing up against those really high progression Greater Rifts, because those are the ones that aren't going to be efficient, and those are the ones where you might as well be back in T6 or just speed running some of those lower tier Greater Rifts.
Yeah, so it definitely is one of those, a lot of people can go through and clear, the Greater Rift 40 in like just a couple minutes. Like it's not even hard anymore.
Yeah.
These people that are going and like, we're getting, what is it? We've had some people go clear through mid 50s. What's the current highest Greater Rift at the moment?
For the season in general?
Yeah.
Last I had checked, I saw some 53s on the barbs. I think I had seen 54 for DHs, and I haven't checked recently, so they could be even higher at this point. But yeah, mid 50s for sure.
Yeah, I think I saw a Demon Hunter in the season that had cleared 55.
Nice.
I have to go through and check it. I know non-seasonal, like the normal rifts, it's just insane.
We're creeping up to the 60s.
Yeah, I think they actually they had on the normal softcore, they have a Demon Hunter that has cleared 60.
Wow, just absolutely crazy. Yeah, and I know there are some because I saw Jake kind of talking about it in Twitter, some 4-man groups that are clearing 69, 70. So there are going to be some crazy high level gems. I actually would be curious to know just how many blood shards you get from a 69 or a 70 clear.
Yeah,
you just instantly go full.
Yeah. Yeah.
And chat saying Fib Barbs are at 56 now. Makes sense. And I guess this is so, since we kind of have a whole bunch of different topics, this is one where I want to jump in and just insert something, because it's going to, before I interrupt it, it was going to flow into the conversation. But one of the things that we discovered just a couple days ago is that there was a bit of an exploit running around wherein people were, the best way to describe it is that there was some leveraging of effects on items combined with legendary gems to make just this insane area of effect damage happen that shouldn't. And so I'll go into some specifics. It has been hotfixed, by the way, so if you attempt to do this, it won't work. They basically just shut down Death's Bargain, and you're like, what is Death's Bargain? It's a Act 5 bounty legendary. It's pants, and its effect is that it turns your life per second into a damage dealing aura, basically. And so what people were doing, and what this monk in particular did, it was a hardcore monk that suddenly shot up and had cleared like Greater Rift 56 in like 12 minutes, and the next person below him was like 51 or something. And what was great was I think it was either his 54 or 55 clear was snapshotted. Someone saw it on the leaderboards, took pictures, etc. It was a 4-minute clear for 54 or 55. So of course that looks fishy.
Something wrong is going there,
right? And he had a shield on because it snapshots your character when you clear the Greater Rift. Yeah. So if you hover over his time, there was like he had a shield on, and people were like, that just seems sketchy as hell because Flying Dragon is kind of the cookie cutter weapon that they're using at this point. So people were kind of peculiar about what was happening, and I guess it was figured out through Reddit investigation / someone who knew the person. He was using a Rogar's huge stone combined with the molten wildebeest gizzard, because we're talking about life per second here, to get the life per second numbers just crazy high. And what Rogar's huge stone does is it increases your life per second as your life goes down. And so I guess what he was doing was manipulating his life a little bit so that he would get way down, and then it would like snapshot a shield with the molten wildebeest gizzard. That was like an integer formula thing, math stuff happened that went really wrong, and the shield was like 222 like trillion like that, and it was never going to be broken by anything. So he was just running through the rift, and everything was dying instantly from the Death's Bargain legendary power. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, and so that's one of those ones that I'm sure that after they went and cleared like the 54 in 4 minutes, so they realized, oh shit, that 56 clear was probably them, clearing everything, getting the Greater Rift boss to spawn, and then exiting and waiting for 8 minutes,
All right. I have to believe that it's like, oh man, I got to make this thing look semi-legit somehow.
Yep.
So I threw up on screen here just a couple of hot fixes. You can see as of April 28th, which was yesterday, Death's Bargain has been temporarily disabled. And I guess there was also an issue where the combination of Rogar's huge stone and molten wildebeest gizzard would occasionally cause the game to crash. So something else going on there too. But that's an upcoming hot fix.
Yeah, that one probably just is no one ever experienced before, but it's just probably the wildebeest gizzard. You can get to such insane levels of life per second, and then the scaling from the Rogar's huge stone, it probably hits an integer mark that causes the game to crash because it overflows. It hits a point where it's like, this is the highest that it can go, and now it wants to go higher, and then the game crashes.
That makes perfect sense then, yeah. So the whole thing is kind of tied together.
Yep.
It's interesting because we had an issue similar to this, if you recall, back when the auction house was still around. And it was that whole issue where they were trying to increase the amount of gold that we could, I think it was sell, or it was, the limit was moving up to 2 billion. And I guess there was some error where I wish I could remember it too. This is like Diablo history at this point. But you would sell it, but there would be an error, so you would get it back, but the sale would go through, so you were like doubling or tripling. And people were just abusing the crap out of that. So I think that was the one time that we saw a global rollback, right? That was what happened with that? Yeah,
the people going through and exploiting that mechanic so that way they could, I don't remember whether it was actually like something, it's like canceling the sale at the same time, it's like having the corroboration there. But yeah, it was definitely something where they would get the gold and the item back, but the other person never actually gave any money.
Right. There were things being made but nothing lost. It was going against the laws of nature, man.
Yeah. Can't do it, Captain.
So yeah, that was it's funny that some of these bugs are still coming back when the numbers are getting so high. And I think one of the things we've talked about in the past is, will there ever be a number crunch? And this kind of seems to be, maybe a little bit of evidence that maybe there should be at some point, just because the numbers are getting pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean that was a major concern for World of Warcraft going into Warlords of Draenor. They went through and they crunched it, not so much for the aspect of like obviously they never said at any point that we're doing this because of just integer problems. We're doing it because it just looks weird when you do like 2 billion damage or something along those lines, where now that's kind of commonplace in Diablo. And I don't know, I like seeing the big numbers. Is it going to be wonky to go through and just have the numbers scaling? Because it was it wasn't really that much of an issue in D2 just because you never saw the numbers.
Right.
But with the way that, the hit point scaled and things of that nature, they did it, the numbers were close to what they are now, like in D2. Like, because you would have things with just ridiculous amounts of hit points, and you could hit, even though, obviously it was the lying character sheet in D2, but you could have um, paladins that were doing like 13 million damage with their hammers, with the concentration auras and such. So you
Right.
had a bunch of like really ridiculous things. But back then, your builds lived and breathed off of either static field or crushing blow.
Right. Static field. Oh man, stuff to remember. Things that chunk things down very quickly.
Yep.
Another topic that I did want to bring up, staying within things that are happening in the community, this is one you pointed me towards, that there's still ire over this Mordek's Brace. I thought we were done with this.
I thought so too. I thought so too.
But yeah, so we have this post that you alerted me to, which I'll throw up on the screen here. And this is Grimiku replying to someone that's complaining, basically saying that the Unhallowed Essence set seems just as ridiculous in function right now in the live game as the IK set was going to be combined with Mordek's Brace back when we were experiencing it during the PTR.
Yep.
Which to me seems, I don't know, I haven't thought about it long enough because this is something that I just only saw today. But, I mean, it is a powerful set, but the justification that Grimiku gives kind of makes sense. It's not pushing DHs so far and away from every other class that, like, it shouldn't be the way that it is. And to truth be told, isn't it the Nats set that's truly pushing the DHs, like, way, way up?
Yeah, at the beginning of the season on Hollowed Essence, that is what was all the top clears, but now people are switching over to Natalia's. They've gone through, they've had enough time to grind out the gear, perfect the sets, and just give it a shot. And it is doing ridiculous things. Demon Hunters are kind of leading the leaderboards, as it were, kind of across the class spectrum there, and it's all because of Natalia's. People have like figured it out, and they're that's what the big thing is. So it is kind of strange seeing someone complaining and comparing it to not the best set. And like it really is someone that's kind of just grasping at straws at this point because they're trying to use numbers. They're trying to go through and math hammer it out. So it's like Unhallowed Discipline is like a 1,500% damage bonus, and this is somehow balanced. It's like it's not even going through and actually like looking at the mechanics. Because with the Demon Hunter, yeah, you do some ridiculous damage with Unhallowed Essence, but if you don't kill anything, or you don't spawn any health globes for your Reaper's Wraps, you're tied down to punishments and bat cooldowns. And if those go down and you haven't pushed anything, you're sitting there, hitting a single target with Entangling Shot. And there are a lot of people that were going and pushing that Unhallowed Essence up to those top those top Greater Rift clears in the beginning. They were doing some really cool things, like still using Bane of the Trapped and just being so good about being able to keep Entangling Shot up on multiple targets, and that was their only way of providing slows, was Entangling Shot. It's a single target skill that only will link one or two enemies that are close by. And it was really cool seeing people and how they were able to play at such a fine level in order to get those clears. And it's just at this point it's really just and even in that same post that Grimiku was going and replying to, they were also complaining about IKs being nerfed from the 500% damage.
PTR.
Yeah, it's just like one of those ones. It's like they're just looking at it purely from a numbers aspect and not from a balance or real world performance aspect. Like they're not actually looking at it from, this is what the numbers were, this is where barbs were, this is where the other classes were, and there you can attribute these 5 extra Greater Rift levels just to a single item. Right. Whereas no one else can compete even with the supposedly overpowered Unhallowed Essence. So that's kind of where it's at right now.
Yeah, I mean, you make a great point when we talk about, I guess, so there are 2 points here from my side. It's practicality versus the theoretical. And so in theory, you're looking at it on paper and you're like, okay, compare these numbers, whatever. But in practice, it actually operates very differently. And I think one of the big things when you talk about practice, is looking at the fact that a lot of the DH stuff that you're talking about is conditional. You have to have the right conditions in order for that damage to actually come to be. And a lot of it also that the original poster actually talked about was you have to have perfect rolls on your discipline across all the slots where it can roll in the first place. So that's multiple slots of your gear already affected. And now we're talking about the barb stuff. And all of that stuff is non-conditional. It was literally like, you equip this item, you get these bonuses flat out. Like, you don't have to, stay at a certain level of fury. You don't have to be in a certain surrounding of monsters or whatever. It's just flat out 50% damage reduction, flat out 50% damage increase, and all the other bonuses that come with having every rune of Wrath of the Berserker. And also all the bonuses that come of just having flat out 500% more damage, So, yeah, I think it's probably a good lesson in terms of making cross-class comparisons where you have to actually play and go into the everyday, like, I guess that old adage of like, walk a mile in this person's shoes, because you're not going to be able to talk about it in a well man, or maybe honestly maybe he has played both and just wanted to kind of push the math side of it and make his point without looking at so much of that practicality stuff. But,
yeah. From their post, it seems as if this player actually has been playing Demon Hunter, because he comments about it's like, I hit the entire screen for 1.2 billion damage. How is that balanced?
But again, very conditional.
Yeah, and it's also when you go through and you look at it, just mentioning again that Unhallowed Essence isn't even the best gear set for Demon Hunters right now, and it's there's one person that's taken Natalia's and gotten it to greater rift 60, and then the next person is 58, where barbarians their top is 58 and then the next person's 57. That's really, really close. Even it's 2 greater rift levels, which is, what is it, is something thereabouts like 35% HP increase, because it's like 16% per level or something along those lines.
Sounds right.
Yeah,
16, 13, something like that.
Yeah, or actually I think you're right, 13%, because they changed it. It's like down to like the 13%, and then of course the 13% on top of the previous 13%.
Right.
So it's even though it is only 2 greater rifts, that is some substantial number difference, but it still is. They're good. You go through and you look at other classes. The Crusader and the Witch Doctors are kind of sitting at 50. There's one Witch Doctor sitting at 58, but who knows? It probably is because of Death Bargain. Who can he's an outlier,
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess we should follow up on that with, I'm pretty sure that those people will be removed from the leaderboards and have their accounts actioned, because Diablo and the devs have now set that precedent of, hey, if you try and cheat this game, like, stuff will happen to you, you're not getting away with it scot-free. And of course that's a very visible sign of like, you're either going to deal with the cheaters or you're not, because this person is clearly at number 1 unearned. So I'm hoping we'll see some action on that soon. And also, to dovetail back around to it too, I just wanted to throw this image up where you can see the shield at the bottom left, and that number literally just keeps going, which is just ridiculous. But yeah, so those outliers are the ones that, and I feel like that's the craziest thing too, is sometimes people will only look at the outliers and just be like, that's the reason why. Look at that one person who pushed this thing so far. Yeah, it's all unbalanced.
Yeah. And, I'm sure patch 2.3 we'll see Vortex Bracers make a return, probably just unlocking a single rune.
That would make the most sense to me.
Yep, or just doing some other benefit. Maybe it buffs the rune that you have active. Maybe it will just double whatever active rune that you have. Who knows?
That could be interesting.
But I mean, that would be a more interesting way of doing it than just unlocking, so that way you always, Vortex Bracer, so you always have, like, say, the 50% damage reduction, so you can also run the 100% damage, something along those lines.
Right. All right. I guess we can move on to another news topic that we had. We
Yeah.
go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, I was just going to go through and say we have Play Your Way here at the Play Your Way Thursday stream number 7 coming up tomorrow. That'll be April 30th over on twitch.tv/Diablo. It'll be at 4 p.m. Pacific, and they usually run about an hour.
That's right.
Yeah, and this time it was the monk build, who was actually the second place. It was the Wave of Light because it was
Keeping with tradition.
It was just one of those things, just keeping with tradition.
Oh, boy.
Wizards do not play in the Play Your Way live stream. So even though the wizard build won, they were unable to make it.
I don't get how this keeps happening. Do Wizards just have like the most fiercest like political ad campaigner? Like, vote for me. You're gonna take this build places, kid. You'll see. And then they're like, by the way, I'm not gonna show up though if we win.
I'm not. Yeah, no. Your votes wasted. Yep, it belongs in Grand Theft Auto. It is just wasted.
Oh, I like that.
But yeah, so it's going to be seeing some monk things going on there, which, especially running off of the last couple patches, monks have been seeing a lot of love and have been really popular lately. I actually was kind of surprised that this one didn't win in the first place. But then again, I have a special place in my heart for Wave of Light. So this is actually the one that I had voted for myself.
Ah, there you go. Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens on this one. If you remember the last time Don Vu, who is going to be the Blizzard representative alongside Nevelistis, last time he was there, they did hardcore. It doesn't look like they're doing hardcore this time.
No, I don't think so, because the person that submitted it, all of their screenshots were normal mode, not hardcore.
I gotcha, okay. So there's that. I just like Don Vu in general. I think he's a cool dude, so that should be fun. And also Meathead Mikael, who is a prominent YouTuber. He streams a little bit, but I don't think that's really the thing that blew up for him. A lot of his YouTube videos get highlights on Diablo fans, etc. And so he's going to be there as well. He said he's going to be playing his Spin to Win Barb, so that'll be fun to kind of see the cross-party stuff going on. I think there are going to be some wizards there as well, too, with Don Vu playing.
Yeah, I also kind of like it. I think it was the Deadmau5 stream was the first time that they did it, where they actually split. When not everyone was playing the same class.
Yes.
I do like seeing that, because it shows off just a little bit more variety.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of cool too to see how like that one particular build that's being highlighted in the player way can also interact with the different skills of the other classes. And if the other classes actually, or the other players actually start to push their builds in order to like show off that one build in particular,
Yeah. Yep. Let's see. There's another one going through and talking about one that we mentioned, or no, not that we mentioned. Sorry, I am already forgetting what it is that I'm doing here. That some people were going through and mentioning in the chat earlier about area damage.
Yes, area damage is a thing that is in the game that people might forget about, besides putting, that 50 points in your Paragon and then going about your business.
Yep.
So what someone figured out, I believe it was a Barb actually, the first forum post that started riling the things up in the community. Going through, people noticed that their area damage wasn't being triggered by the multipliers. One of the hallmarks of the IK set, for instance, is that 6-piece gives you a multiplier of 2 times your damage, 100%. And so people were seeing like, hey, my area damage isn't being bolstered by that multiplier there. And then they went through and tested other multipliers, and apparently some of the other ones weren't working with it either. So it looks like area damage is set for some fixes. It needs a little bit of love.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the reason why no one has noticed this until now, is just, area damage itself is a pretty weak stat in comparison. Not a lot of people gear for it. Because it shares, it always is going to be something that it shares either with crit or crit damage, or you got a skill bonus or something, and area damage is useless against a single target, so when you're going and attacking the majority of Rift bosses, it does nothing for you. And like you said, it's really just something that you spend 50 points on with your Paragons on, on your way to level 800. And it kind of flew under the radar, but they not only, Nevelistus went through and said that they not only kicked the bug over to the quality assurance folks in order to figure out exactly what's going on, but they also want to say that they kind of have some things like in store for it. They're not, I guess it's, what is it? They're reviewing the mechanics behind area damage as a whole, and that sounds like they might have something planned with either buffing that stat or changing the way that it interacts. Maybe we could get area damage to crit on its own, or have a small scaler so that way it can proc effects, or maybe even pets can proc it. There's some things that they could do to play around with it to make it a little bit more powerful.
For sure. I'm wondering if it'll ever get to the point where it'll actually be in a fix that we take on gear. Probably just being a realist, I don't foresee that.
Yeah, that would be one of those ones where one instance that I could see it is if it actually had the ability to proc effects when you're going through and trying to get your best clear times. That could be something. Like if it could proc effects in crit, that would be an amazing way to, like, say, spread pain enhancer if you didn't have like full screen AoEs. Or even just something, the Bane of the Stricken, should that ever get returned. That would also be another, awesome thing to go and be added in. Or actually, even just the way that it might interact with, like, Demon Hunters. The strafe builds have been using focus. It was the evasive fire focus because it's cold damage, and then ice blink, so that way that cold damage applied to slow. If the area damage could then also proc slows on things to buff up Bane of the Traps, that would be another little interesting interaction that they could do with it, just by adding a proc coefficient to it. But then also for things that have really high proc coefficients with area damage, you could be leading to some very crazy unintended side effects.
For sure. One of the things that you mentioned, I actually, in terms of why it's kind of bad right now, is when you get to certain Greater Rift bosses, for instance, it doesn't do much for you. I would like to see it actually get one of the changes that we've been seeing with some of the legendary powers. If you look at what are those called, Nilfer's Boast, the meteor boots for wizards, or the bracers for shucks, I'm so bad right now, Draken's Lesson, the bracers for crusaders, where if there aren't a certain amount of enemies around, like if it's 3 or less or 2 or less or whatever, it actually gets bonuses increased. So it'd be cool if, like, your area damage when there's only 2-3 enemies around or whatever actually would go up by a certain multiplier or whatever, so it still was a significant source of damage.
I mean, that is one way of going through and doing it, but then, like, if you were to say make it so that way area damage could proc on a single enemy, at that point it's just mathematical. It's just like crit damage. It's like, I'm just going to put it into this formula, and this is exactly how much damage it does. Is it better for me to have it on my gear, or is crit more effective, or is the skill bonus more effective at that point? So it kind of loses that aspect of it being interesting in how, because it's not just like a direct damage boost that you can easily calculate when you're going through and clearing a rift, to something that is like, it is just this much damage, end all be all type thing.
No, that is a good point. Yeah, I guess you'd want to keep it more unique.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's just one of the things that you look at, I guess, from like the developer standpoint. Obviously, it would go long ways to fixing the stat and making it something that players would want on their gear. But it also, it's just at that point, it's just another, increases fire damage by 15%. Is kind of just what it would end up.
Very true. Yeah. Can I put the tinfoil hat on for 1 second here? One thing that kind of bothered me about this post from Nevelistus, she was talking about the fact that they didn't want to just do like a band-aid fix to area of effect, so they're gonna wait until the next major patch and get a really good fix going for it. Well, let me read this paragraph, and you can tell me if I'm crazy. This is something we intend to fix.
Yes.
Okay, I'm crazy.
Sorry.
All right, let's find out why I'm crazy. But we're holding off implementing these fixes for the time being as we're reviewing the mechanics of area damage as a whole, and we want to avoid introducing sweeping changes in the middle of a season. Emphasis added. As a result, changes to area damage will not be coming in patch 2.2.1, but at a later date. And then there's some other sentences. But she says we don't want to introduce sweeping changes in the middle of a season, and then as a result, these changes will not be coming in patch 2.2.1. Sounds to me like we're getting 2.2.1 in the middle of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, though I'm not terribly shocked by that for patch 2.2.1 to be in the middle of the season. It's already on the PTR. And it really is just a collection of bug fixes.
Okay. Oh, yeah. That's right. That's like I actually forgot that PTR did go up. You're right.
Yeah. So that one is not terribly surprising to me, just because there's nothing really mechanically that's going into it.
Okay. I just get worried when they're like, we're gonna patch in the middle of the season, and all of a sudden like something's gonna break, something's gonna get crazy buffed, or I don't know, man. I just get nervous. I have season 1 PTSD.
yeah, especially when you have that little patch. It's the little patch because it was 2.1.2 that screwed everything up.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that would I would say inconsequential. Don't worry about it. Don't worry.
I'm not worried. You talked me off the fence.
All right.
But what I do want to point out, though, Nabi in chat is saying, I wonder if it's a change that might get pushed to the expansion.
Dun.
I mean, that's something that we always have to come back to, right? Because we're still getting closer to Gamescom, and we're wondering if that's going to be the big moment of the unveil for this next part of the Diablo adventure.
Yeah. I think we talked about a little bit about that. We mentioned it last episode, and I didn't even put it in the show notes, and here we are talking about it again.
It works its way back in.
Yeah, and we'll mention this again over towards the end of the show, but also I guess this is a little bit of spoilers. Leviathan and I were on Realm Maintenance, a podcast about podcasts.
Yes.
And you can expect our episode next week, but we also talk, even then we talk more about the expansion theories and conspiracies that are going on behind the scenes, of course.
Right. So I guess we can teaser here, keep it light, and then if you want more in depth, check out that podcast. It'll go live next Tuesday, I believe. But the only thing I want to say is I kind of want to debunk that area damage fix going into the expansion, just because we know that there's going to be a 2.3, and that's when we're going to get the other sets for the classes that didn't get new sets, so the Crusader, Witch Doctor, and the one I always forget.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to come before we get an expansion. So just in terms of area damage, I think we will see that fix before we see the expansion. But I do still hope we see the expansion.
Yep, because we will definitely have, they've gone through, Wyatt talked about it on the show. 2.3 is something that's going to happen. So it's definitely, there will be, expansion or not, there is going to be another major content patch. So that would be the most likely scenario of them going and adding that area fix, area damage, fix. And, yeah, let's go with that.
Fix. It's a
fix. And a fix.
Work.
For a fix for an affix.
We did have one more topic that you pulled up. It's one that seems to come up every now and again. I guess, so I'll preface it by saying I've heard Flux talk about this forever and ever, and he was actually pro this, and so I'm going to unveil what this is. And we're talking about elites giving out their orbs in the Greater Rifts. Those purple orbs that you have to track down after every fight with an elite. There was a post about it that Nineball fished up, and some guy was just like upset about it. It's like, why do we have to go and it was the Tias actually, who's one of the MVPs over there. It's like, why do we have to pick up these globes zigzagging all over the place? Like, why isn't that just baked into killing an elite? And then Tivolier came in and kind of did a discussion about why and current design rewards, etc., that visual reward, that physicality of picking something up and gaining more progress, etc. But when it was the PTR for patch 2.1.2, the orbs were actually dropping in regular rifts for a short portion of time. And people were like, is this a bug? Is this like their way of making normal Nephilim rifts move faster? Or is this something intended?
And a lot of people loved it.
Yeah. A lot of people were pro more of these globes, pushing the progress forward. And I think they do kind of have a nice feeling in terms of you pick them up and you're like, yeah, I'm moving forward. Sometimes I guess like one of the things is like when you're hurried, you're rushed for time, you know it's going to be a tight clear. One of the things is you miss one and you're like, crap, did I pick it up? Did I not get it? And then you go back to that room and you did pick it up, and so now you've wasted time. But maybe that's just another way that we get some player execution into the equation, right? Like you have to play well, kind of time, and to some degree you can kind of predict where some of the orbs are going to drop when the elite dies. They tend to like get thrown in certain directions. And so if you're a player that's cognizant of that, you can actually use it to your advantage to move in the direction as the elite is dying and then get like 2 orbs. It also gives a bit of, I guess it gives you a bit of a check in terms of like, hey, you should have some pickup radius so that if you really are concerned about these, you're just going to pick them up with your radius.
Yeah, though that one, my personal experience with a lot of them is you're going through, you're running, kind of kill them in a corner. So I know they're either going to spawn right there or maybe like in this direction that like the curve is going, and then for whatever reason they spawn that way. And it's just like they do something weird. It's like, why are they over there? They just kind of get thrown out. So it's really hard predicting which direction that they're going to go most of the time. And they always seem to want to spawn where you've already been, not the direction that you need to go.
Behind you, yeah.
Yep. And I actually, I like the response that Tyvalier gave and why they don't. Or why mobs do spawn the progress orbs, and they're not just baked into the elites. But it is an interesting thing, because when you look at like the leaderboards, people are clearing rifts with 9 seconds to spare. That is easily, like 2 or 3 elite packs worth of mobs, or or 2 or 3 elite packs worth of orbs, not mobs, that spawned in the wrong direction.
That's true.
That's those little 2 or 3 seconds at a time that can affect your standing on the leaderboard, or whether you even manage to clear the rift at all.
That's true. I guess I will bend a little bit to say that they could be a bit more predictable. It actually reminds me of some of my complaints that were never aired on the show because it like doesn't matter at all. But when you're wearing the gladiator gauntlets for like all of 2 seconds before you get an upgrade above them, they always drop the gold behind you. I actually I haven't worn them in so long, I don't know if they finally changed it. But one of the things that always was really annoying was you get that massacre bonus, and there's the gold, and you're like, okay, I'm moving this way. But damn it, my gold's back there. And of course, at that time, it's like you needed gold, you wanted more gold and stuff, and now it's like whatever.
Yeah, back when it mattered.
Yeah. But it's just another one of those things where it's like you could have made the drop a little bit more predictive, and it's tough because your character is always moving, so it takes like a snapshot of where you once were and drops that gold there, but it's not going to account for the fact that you just moved with like crazy movement speed, 10 yards in the other direction.
Yeah, and Big Tabs is going and mentioning in chat that it always takes ages to spawn. And that was one of the things that I was just going to go and add on there is like when you do use those, or I remember when I had like a godly pair of them before 2.1 and before they actually made the change, when it used to just like it showered gold based on the difficulty that you were in and all this other types of stuff, and it was just broken before they went in and fixed it. But it's like you'd go through, you'd get your enemy kills and such, and then like you would have like the spree counter come up, and then you're like, okay, and then it all pops out. It's like when is it gonna go through? And then you think you have the timing down, and the spree counter pops up, and you're running. It's like, okay, I'm gonna stop now because it is gonna spawn behind me, and spawn. Come on, and it always just seemed to screw with your head about how long it took for the gold to spawn.
This is true. This is fair. So I guess, I kind of threw that out there just to tie it into the idea that maybe these orbs could operate with a similar fix, because we've seen that issue already, and it apparently hasn't been fixed yet, but it would be interesting if they could at least make it predictive. Or just go like I guess here's the thing though, right? If you're running a Greater Rift and it's an open area, and there aren't a lot of those, to be fair, right now in the Greater Rift pool, but if it's an open area, which way is forward and which way is back? How does the game know?
Yeah, or how would the game even know which way is forward, which way is back if it's a loop?
I mean that's true too, right?
Yeah. or if you're going in the wrong direction, something along those lines. It's how do you change that? We of course are going and talking about this, and we have no idea how the mechanics behind orb dropping works when you kill a mob. Like what the physics behind it, about where it goes and throws it. Should they maybe change it for the progress orb so it always just spawns, say, within 10 yards of where the last elite died? Um,
Hmm.
and obviously within the game, 10 yards is like that big, because your character is like 16 yards, so it's not a very large distance. It's just it's just somewhere to keep it more centralized. And then how many hardcore players will complain about that it always spawns on the mob because they died picking up their orbs and died to molten. um,
Right.
it's just there's always little things to consider in that respect. I guess it's just one of those ones. It's like that's just that little level of RNG that can kind of make or break you throughout the rifts.
And that's something I was, before we go too long in the tooth on it, that was something I was just about to say was it's RNG to some degree. It's another
Yep.
way of them throwing that little thing that we love to hate into the game, because you can't predict where they're going to be, and you can't predict what gear is going to drop, and you can't predict what rolls you'll get. So to me, it kind of fits into the microcosm of what we're doing here. But
Yep.
I think if you make it predictable in any kind, so we're talking about like how does the game know what's forward, how we know what's back. The same idea that you started to get to, like maybe it always goes to the corpse or something like that. Once you kind of know what to expect, then the player activity, the way that the player plays the game will adjust accordingly. And so at that point, it should cease to be a problem.
Yep. And then to just go through and touch upon it. The Tyvalier going and talking about like the reason why they dropped the orbs is because the feedback was when it didn't feel rewarding. If you're going through and you just killed the elite pack and your progress meter just kind of went through and increased a little bit, but when they had the progression orbs actually drop, you felt as if you were getting rewarded because you could see that extra bit of progress, even though your progress bar increased more from the elite pack as opposed to a normal. It also, then you got this huge boost from the progress orbs, and you felt like, yeah, I'm doing it, I did something,
I'm doing it.
I'm doing it. But as they always say, sometimes the orb drops in front of you, sometimes the orb drops behind you.
That old saying.
Yep. Just saying.
Just saying. All right, so let's get to the title of the show, because this is a hot topic that's been buzzing throughout the community lately. I think we're seeing more spotlight on these items, and we're talking about Hellfire Amulets here. Because for whatever reason, they just seem to be the best in slot for a lot of the builds that are coming up with the new sets, the reworks to the sets, etc. I feel like I know people farmed them in the past in season 2, season 1, etc. But it never seemed like there was such a concentrated focus on Hellfire Amulets. And I think now that because a lot of people are out there trying to farm them, trying to get those really good GG rolls, the perfect passives, they're starting to realize that it's a really hard pain. That's something we always talk about when we get them as submissions for items of the week. We're like, whoa, we know the work that it takes to get there, but now it's becoming kind of commonplace, commonly accepted that this is just a frustrating process to go through for what seems to be a very low chance for a good reward.
And I do wonder, because a lot of the times previously, before the Hellfire Amulet, was always a good choice because it gave you a free passive, but a lot of the builds, either required you to have your set piece for like monks, the Sun Wuko Shine, or they recommended one of the elemental immunity ones, because that was. But now things are just going to like such extremes in terms of damage with the greater rifts that we're at, that it's kind of getting to that point where resistances and survivability, if you're not playing hardcore, don't matter as much because you're kind of going to get two-shotted anyways. If you get into a bad engagement, nothing will save you.
Right.
Sorry, I always do this with whatever class I'm being favorited of in the season, but just going back to Demon Hunter. The guy that went through and cleared the Greater of 60 with the Natalia's build, if you watched his stream and looked at his gear, he's got like his highest resist is like 600.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's just trying to keep up smoke screen for as long as he could possibly can, to keep it going. For that, that is his survivability, kind of like the season one Marauders, just using permanent smoke screen. And it's just that's what he's going through and using, because otherwise, well, everything one shots me anyways, whether I have 500 resist or 2,000 resist, it just doesn't matter. And so that little aspect of like, well, I can survive arcane damage, too bad the thunderstorm killed me. So that way is not, I think we're just seeing kind of like a meta shift from that survivability, because our damage was kind of there. We just had to make sure that we could survive in order to kill the greater rift, to where now it's all about, I need every last ounce of DPS in order to go and make it through, and if I die a couple times, I can make it up by doing more damage.
I guess so. One of the things there is that it's a softcore thing that's kind of exacerbating the problem, because they can push much further and get to that point. Something that, and again, like I just happened to talk to JH quite a bit today, so I have a couple of things on the mind from him. And one of the things we were discussing is Bane of the Trapped is just this insane, like, you have to take this offensive gem because it is just the best one. And what happens when they get rid of perma CC? Will we actually see more defense? And kind of the conclusion of our conversation was, let's see. But at the end of the day, it's really the DPS that starts to limit things, because like you've just been saying, at some point you're not going to be able to mitigate the damage, especially in a timed event. And that's kind of what makes this thing so unique, is that in a timed event, you need the damage to push through to actually achieve the goal that you're set out, is just beating the timer. And so you could have all the defense in the world and not die in a Greater Rift 65 or something, but you're never going to clear it to get that reward on the leaderboard. So I think there definitely is something to be said for everyone kind of moving, especially with the power creep, and moving towards a lot more offense. I think things that are kind of ancillary in terms of, hey, this extra passive might give you more conditional damage here or there. It's kind of a cool thing to have, but it's not necessarily necessary. Maybe that's why they're starting to gain a bit more popularity. Or even if you're just shoving that cheat death passive to the amulet, then that allows you a little bit more leeway with the passives that you take on your actual bar.
Yeah, exactly. If there is some sort of survivability passive, which is mandatory, just either having it on the amulet, or getting another good damage passive, is just, it frees up slots. It gives you more options that you can go through and do by playing around with that fifth passive slot.
And something that's interesting that's happening in the chat right now is people are talking about the immunity amulets versus the Hellfire Amulets and what's going to be better. One thing that we did comment on, I think when Wyatt was on the show, was kind of the indirect buff to Mara's Kaleidoscope, because they added Hamelin, who's another poison boss. And I believe even before Hamelin was there, that the majority of bosses, not the majority, but the most bosses in terms of elemental damage were poison based. So you had your Veracity, the one that I never remember, Erathon maybe, that spits out poison.
Yeah, like Escahel, something like that. It's the angel.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you have the choker, and then the other guy. Yeah, there you go.
Poison as well. Yeah.
Yep.
So there are a few that you gain pretty much like a GG fight against once you line up that poison immunity with that Greater Rift Guardian. But that kind of leads you into fishing, and I guess what the Hellfire Amulet provides is sort of a bonus that always works, right? So even when you're in a Greater Rift that doesn't necessarily end with you getting that Greater Rift Guardian that would have been perfect for your immunity, you still kind of give yourself a fighting chance, because you have that power that's going to work based on either helping you get to the Greater Rift Guardian faster by clearing the rift faster, or help you against the Greater Rift Guardian, either giving you that sustainability or that one-on-one single target damage that you might have been missing, etc.
Yep. And just perfect continuing of the conversation there. It's Gone mentioning in chat, Uber key farming is as annoying as trials.
That's saying a lot.
Yeah, that is saying quite a bit, and that is actually one of the things that kind of sparked this topic for us to even bring up tonight. I think it spawned from a post that kind of reached the top of Reddit a couple days ago.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was going and talking about the not directly complaining about making Hellfire amulets, but just the severe disparity between group farming Hellfire amulets
Yes.
and solo farming,
Yes.
and then kind of going from there. And it's just kind of felt like we're seeing more Hellfire amulets pop up. It seems to be kind of like we were mentioning, a shift in the meta, and then now it's also kind of on the radar of that people are seeing as a something that needs to be fixed. That it sucks to try and farm them solo.
Right, and I guess a thing to mention with that is there's this idea that, or not idea, there's this actuality that occurred, and no one can pinpoint when this happened. But now the key drops are global, and so that means you don't even need to be at the rift at the key warden when the kill is made. If a key drops, it drops for everyone that's in the game. You could be in Act 5 or in Act 5, there is no key warden. You could be in Act 1 farming your key warden, and Nineball's in Act 4 farming his key warden. He gets one in Act 4. I don't get one in Act 1. I poured over to him in Act 4, and even though I wasn't there, I still get the key. No one knows when this happened, but it's a thing now. And it makes it so that doing it in groups is by far way more efficient.
Wasn't it that it was added in with the patch, like 2.2 or 2.1.2 patch notes, but then people were saying that it was in before that, like it was a hot fix or a change, but we couldn't find proof of it.
My thought on it is that it was a two-part change. I think the first part of it was that if a key dropped, it dropped for everyone, but you still had to be there for the fight. So you had to be in Act 2, against the key warden to get an Act 2 key. But if I got one, you got one too, guaranteed. And then I think the second part was it doesn't even matter if you're there, you can still get it.
And going through, and Big Tabs is mentioning in chat, it's 16 times the efficiency for a 4-player group versus solo, because not only does the entire party, it's not just that the whole party gets the keys, it is because the whole party gets the keys. So when your party completes a set, it's not just one portal that you can open, it's 4.
Right.
Yeah, so you're going through, and then so you're going to be going through, getting the keys faster. You're going to be opening the portals faster, and then just you clear, because you have one person in every act attacking each of the key wardens.
Yep.
So in the time that it takes one person to go through farm and kill one key warden, they've already killed all 4.
Yep. So they're definitely, and this is a conversation that we often have in terms of the benefits of solo, the benefits of group play. And some of the main proponents of the multiplayer stuff is that this game is a multiplayer game, and it's meant to be played with friends, and there should be advantages to grouping up. As someone who personally plays solo quite a bit, or likes to, and has in the past, and is making an effort to play more in groups this season, I can say that I do note multiplayer just has way more advantages to it. Like, that is definitely a fact. But there should be offsets for solo play. So in the same way that you kind of see the whole unity and follower, even if it's not a thing that was supposed to be a thing, it's still a nice part of being a solo player, because you get that little added protection. And if you want to use unity, like some builds aren't even using it anymore, so there's that. But in the same vein, it would be nice to see an increased key drop. And we kind of talked about this with Wyatt too, in terms of the upgrade chance for legendary gems. Again, you can push higher in groups, so you can get better gems higher. And when you go by yourself, all of a sudden you can't push to that Greater Rift 60 on your own. So then what do you do with your gems? Nothing. So there just should be a little bit of a bump for that solo play.
Yeah. And that it seems to be kind of like, trials are vanquished. What else is it that we can focus on that needs to change? What is it that needs to be addressed next?
We're going around the horn.
I'm specifically not saying what is it next to complain about, because this is a valid concern. There are a lot of people that will go through play. I mean, you yourself, how many times have you been, well, obviously there's only been 2 other seasons, but how many times have you gone through and you played your Crusader, made it into the tops of the leaderboards playing solo? and what the difference is between being able to do that and how much higher you could have gone if you were in one of those dedicated gym leveling groups, or if you were able to go through and run in a party and gain just obscene amount more experience to get to higher paragon levels to up your damage.
Exactly.
So it's some of those things that some of the people do want to compete and are up there on the leaderboards, but they might be stuck at like rank 15, rank 20, something along those lines, and they have no hopes of progressing any further because they continue to play solo. And it's just wanting a little bit more parity between multiplayer and solo play. And this is something that's kind of only now becoming an issue as they've gone and make changes, because the developers have slowly been making changes, because it was useless to play multiplayer. It was more beneficial to play just solo.
Mm-hmm.
So they were making changes. Okay, so now we'll make a multiplicative buff to experience when you're in a group setting. We'll change the keys, we'll do all these things just so you actually had a reason to want to group up. And they wanted to make it so that there were benefits to playing multiplayer, and so if you were rewarded for wanting to play with other people. And that's kind of the developer mindset, is they still want that to be more rewarding than playing solo, which is fine. It's understandable. You want a reason to play with your friends. You don't want to feel that you're being penalized for playing with your friends.
For sure.
But maybe they could go back and adjust or make tweaks so that way it's not as big of a difference as it is now. We're going and we're talking 10, 15 levels of greater rifts between some of the class solo clears and some of the higher end 4-player clears. And that's a lot of damage. That's an extra 3% damage on a Bane of the Trapped. There's a lot of things that they can go and make a little tiny changes to maybe rein it in a little bit. It's something that I'm sure is on their radar to go through and address. But I guess the one thing is, to the listeners, is just to rein in your expectations just from the design or the development aspect of it. They still have to incentivize multiplayer play. Because if they penalize you for playing in a group, then why would you ever want to play with your friends? You're always just going to go through and do solo player games. So there are always going to be advantages to playing in groups, maybe just not as big of an advantage as there is now.
Right. It shouldn't be like up here and down here.
Yeah.
A couple of things from what you've been saying, a question I posed to you over email when we were talking about this potentially was, is this going to be another one-handers versus two-handers? Where at one point, one-handers are great, and then they buff two-handers, and now two-handers are the way to go. So what happens to one-handers? You know what I mean? Like if you decide to push one-handers back up now, then two-handers become not as good. And I mean, you kind of answer that with saying like, one will always be better. Multiplayer will always be better because they want to incentivize you playing with your friends. And when you think about what they're doing too in terms of development, adding clans, adding communities, things that highlight kind of that social aspect of the game, is going to push people towards wanting to play together, because it's like, hey, I'm making friends in this community. Dude, I like you. I like you too, man. Let's play together, bro. All right, man. Yeah. So you want that to be a good feeling. You want to kind of, come away with those stories. It's like, man, I remember 4 years ago it was you and me in season 3, and we were just tearing it up. And you don't want that feeling to be like, man, I remember 4 years ago it was you and me in season 3, and I hated every moment of partying with you because I thought I could be solo and going so much better. So there are reasons for the multiplayer stuff to definitely feel, or not to feel, to have a slight advantage, but should be slight, not vast.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, all right. Soapbox completed.
Yep. And I think it is just a good point that you bring up about the one-hander, two-hander, is there's always going to be a better way of playing. It's trying to get 100% parity, and so that everything is balanced between things being equal. It's like it's just not going to happen.
Agreed.
It's just you'll never be able to have something just 1-to-1. There's always going to be an advantage this way or that way. So that way it's an unfortunate side effect.
So yeah, it's just a reality, really.
Hmm.
All right. Were there any other big topics or things in terms of community discussions that we want to get into before we got our specifically generated stuff from our player feedback or listener feedback?
Um, there was the one thing, the comments about achievements.
That's true. Yes. I guess we can quickly go over this one. So this occurred when I was just throwing out a random tweet that said, "I don't know how I feel about season three." In so many words, it was kind of just like there's this weird feeling in season three right now. I think honestly it was just burnout for me. I kind of been playing pretty nonstop, full bore. So I think taking a little step back was what I needed. But I threw that tweet out there, and I got a response from Trevor Bell, who's one of our listeners, and he actually set up the EU uh, Westmarch Workshop community. So if you guys are in the EU, there is a community over there, by the way. So thank you to him for setting that up. But he mentioned he didn't like the way that achievements within seasons felt. He thought that they were a little too pushed towards the hardcore with a lowercase h, like the more players that are just going to grind and grind. It felt very grindy, these new achievements. And you can recall, believe it was the Tavern Talk where Wyatt mentioned Don Vu went in and like handcrafted hundreds of new achievements specifically for seasons. And they got rid of a lot of the ones that were kind of just, well, not got rid of, but they didn't make the repeats of, you're just earning the ones that you had from non-season for seasons again.
Yeah.
And so I didn't expect that at all as a thing. I was like, are people talking about this? Is this something? And then Lala chimed in and was saying, yeah, I've seen some things in the forums of people saying, I don't like the new achievements. They do feel too grindy. They feel like they're not set up in a way that I want to earn them because I don't, if I target them, it's going to take up all my time, et cetera, et cetera. Other reasons that I didn't delve too deeply into. But I guess I wanted your feelings on this. Is there something that, is this something that you feel too, and the difference between achievements and conquests, and just kind of talk about a little bit all that?
It is interesting. That was one thing I didn't realize that they had changed the achievements at the very beginning of the season. And so once we hit in the previous seasons, by the time that you hit 70, that's it. You have your 400 achievement points. You've unlocked all of the feats of strength. You've gotten all the transmog rewards and stuff, the banner rewards for playing in the season. That's it. You're done. And so I was going through, and I think I was maybe, it was on the Saturday. I hit Paragon 75, and then I'm like, why am I even caring about my Paragon portrait? I can just go through and use the new seasonal one. And that's when I went through and checked, and I was like, oh, I have like 80 achievement points. It's like, huh. Well, now. And then I went through and checked and saw that, so they went through and they completely changed everything for this season. You actually had to go and, put, I wouldn't say like a real, like that much effort into it, but you did have to put effort into it to go out and specifically hunt down certain achievements to get to the 400 points. So that way you could get, your portrait and the pennant and such. So that was a little bit of a change, and at first it was something that I actually liked, and I think right now I kind of still do. I don't know how much I've been playing this season compared to someone that might be taking it a bit more casually than myself, if that's possible. But just kind of going through and looking at it, it wasn't that bad. You really just going through leveling to 70, getting yourself geared up, and then going back through and, killing some of the bosses, on the specific torment levels. This doesn't really take too much of a detour out of your time in order to get it. I guess if you are the person, maybe it actually is the people that are complaining are the ones that are more geared towards the hardcore achievement junkies that need to complete everything. But, at that point, these achievements look easier than completing everything, from the, having to just go through and do everything all over again.
From the non-seasonal pool.
For the non-seasonal ones.
Yeah.
So I guess at that, from my viewpoint, is I guess I don't really see that much of a problem with it. Obviously conquests are things that you need to like sit down and focus on and change your build, change your gear. I need to specifically go and do this and dedicate a lot of time and effort to it in order to go and get a conquest done. But I also don't see it as a problem of achievements, being something that you just get. Oh, I got to 70. I've got all my achievement points. So that's it. I'm done.
Mhm.
You know, it does to me. It doesn't seem bad actually having to go and put a little bit of time and effort in order to get your 400 seasonal achievement points and um, get all of your rewards. For the two feats of strength. If they even keep that arrangement in the future.
Right. There's something to be said about we were getting feedback in season 2, I believe it was, where people were saying, wait, like, are these just the same achievements from, see, like, is there a reason for me to go for these achievements again? And it's like, well, unless you're after that achievement leaderboard, no, not really.
Yeah.
Especially if you've earned them, once last season or previous to that even. They're going to be in your account and there's no overlap or anything. So to me, it seems like, well, this should be a welcome change because now you actually have new achievements to chase specific for seasons. And there are some of them that are kind of like progressional. So you have like your get one gem up to rank 10 or rank 15 or something and onward and so forth. And it actually guides you towards the conquest where you're supposed to get the 6 gems up to rank 40. So to me, it seems like it's kind of cool that they do intertwine that way when you talk about achievements and conquests. And I guess the problem does arrive, like you were hinting at, for those people that are just the true diehard completionists when they want every single achievement. If some of them are that crazy high number, because we've seen the dev team kind of peel back on some achievements, the Splinter one, killed all the what are those, the trees in Act 1, even the Greater Rift ones. It was like regular rifts. It was like kill a certain amount of monsters inside Greater Rifts and maybe just complete a certain amount of Greater Rifts. Those were dialed back as well. So I feel like it's something that's always a bit of a whip, is my new favorite acronym, a work in progress. And I think maybe if there is a feeling that, I guess, they'll probably just look at the metrics and say who completed all the seasonal achievements. And of those people, how many, I guess they can't really track how many hours because you can't divvy it up that well. But just looking and saying how much of the people that maybe completed 50% only did that much and so on. And so there's got to be ways to look at it and determine if some of them are hitting the right mark and if some of them could be moved to different sweet spots.
Yep, that's those sweet data points. Yep.
But yeah, I figured I should at least, it was something that was brought to my attention, so I just wanted to throw it out there. Maybe we'll get some feedback from people who have more to say on the subject.
Yeah, definitely. That's one thing that I'd like to hear back from the viewers and followers of the show. What your thoughts on it. And I know there's some people mentioning in the comments that it just feels like it's you're kind of like forced into doing like almost nothing but like greater rifts, but you can get more than halfway just by killing bosses. If you just go through and kill all of the bosses, because they're worth 40 points each, and there's 6 achievements for completing all of the boss kills. So you have 240 points sitting right there.
And there's something to be said too, because there are achievements linked to completing regular rifts for the different torments at different intervals of time. So if you clear T4 in 6 minutes and you get an achievement for that, it's 10 points, etc.
Yeah. So, a lot of it is, like I said, it does require a little bit of investment to go through, and, you can't get it. Well, I guess if you're a hardcore player, you will get it just by playing because you're leveling up your gems, you're completing the higher greater rifts and such. If you're not going through I'm tackling the leaderboard type thing, it does require a little bit of investment in going out and doing specific things that I guess that you might not normally be doing. If you're just content to be just running like Torment 6 and Greater Rift 30. You'll have to go back and change up a little bit of your play style to do it.
Agreed. But yeah, definitely, if you guys out there have feedback either on this or any of the topics that we just touched, I know there are some feelings out there on the Hellfire stuff, and we didn't even touch the Hellfire ring, which is we could talk about that for another 30 minutes. So definitely send us some feedback. Westmarch Workshop at BlizzPro.com. It will be featured in next week's this coming segment, if that makes sense to you. Since we're moving over to the player feedback section of things. We got a couple of... Sorry, go
And
ahead.
just while we're getting onto it, or even seeing some people here, in chat going through and mentioning, it's like, if I'm stuck in T1, I'm screwed. I'm on T3 and having issues going through. I guess at this point in the season, those are pretty much those are valid complaints. Yeah, but you do have, at a minimum 3.5 more months.
This is true.
Yeah, with which to go through and do it. I guess if you don't want to play seasons and you're only doing it in order to get those achievements, I can definitely feel your complaints. But yeah, if you'd like to expand upon those thoughts and ideas, please, Westmarch Workshop at BlizzPro.com. We want to hear your feedback. We'd love to hear from you, and tell your story on the show in the section that we're just about to get into.
Right on. Yes, yes. Now we're heading on over to our player feedback section, and we got quite a few entries here. Some really interesting things as well. We are running a little bit on the time, so we'll try and speed through some, but we definitely will give their due discussion for a decent amount of these. So let me just go ahead and finish blabbing, and I want to take on one that was sent directly to me, actually. This comes from Cromox, and he's theory crafting a new set for the Crusaders, because like I have touched on a couple of different episodes, but also earlier today, in 2.3, Crusaders will receive a new set, and I've been thinking it's going to be Blessed Hammer. You just mentioned hammers earlier today, and it is kind of one of those beloved. People were so stoked when they saw the preview for the Crusader and noticed that Blessed Hammers are going to be coming back, and we don't have anything that really glorifies it yet. So I could definitely see the next set kind of pushing the hammer build. And I mean, we had talked at one point, right? Like the hammer jammers should be part of the Crusader stuff.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some ground for those working in and whatnot. But Chromox goes in a completely different direction. He comes up with the Heaven's Fervor set. And he actually sent me, I'm going to pull this up. He sent me a Google Doc with images. And like, look, this is crazy. Like the 6-piece effect, like all plotted out and stuff. So I kind of I don't know how to disseminate this, but I want to encourage Chromox to maybe put up like an official forum post or something just to let this be a thing. Maybe throw it in the Crusader forum somewhere so people can kind of talk about it. But it looks like a lot of work went into it. So I want to just have it be a thing that sees more eyes, because people will be listening to this and so they might not see this. But his basic breakdown of it is that it's going to be a 7-piece set. The 2-piece bonus is that hitting an enemy with a generator reduces the cooldown of Falling Sword and Heaven's Fury by 1 second. The 4-piece set bonus is Falling Sword, Fist of the Heavens, and Heaven's Fury deals 150% more damage. And the 6-piece set bonus is that casting Falling Sword, Fist of the Heavens, and Heaven's Fury will create 2 other corresponding skills either side of the targeted area. So that was that image that you saw with the circles. This is the middle one's your actual effect, and then on both sides you get a duplicative effect, essentially, or triplicated, which is kind of cool. And we do have a few items as Crusaders that focus on each of these skills individually, but having a set that kind of ties it all together and then making those items ancillary parts of this set could be another way to kind of push these forward. Because right now, let me just make sure I say the right thing. Yeah, 2 of these are very heavy CDR based skills, so a lot of cooldown that needs to be reduced to kind of have them up all the time. And then Fist of the Heavens is just a very heavy wrath costed skill. But all of them are really cool in effect, and one of the things that he mentions is it's supposed to kind of be this feeling of you have different ways to start battle. You can be the initiator, jumping in with your Falling Sword, kind of attack from a distance with your Fist of the Heavens. Heaven's Fury kind of does its own thing with its AI targeting, etc. So there are different ways to play, but it kind of has that same holy feel, the heavens to it. So it'd be interesting to see some more talk on this and see it evolve.
Yeah, definitely. I like seeing it when people go through and they make their own set, or they make their own like way of playing. This is something that I had an idea. They're trying to get into that mindset of what it's like to be a developer.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's worth encouraging, because at the tavern talk that we just had, well, not just had, but the most recent one that we had, John Yang even said he specifically took the power for the Gavel of Judgment straight from the Bard forums. So like your ideas are being heard. If you throw things out like this that make sense, or that can be refined into making sense for the game, it's very possible that it could be a thing that exists. And how cool would that be to play your set that you created in the game.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we were stoked just at having an item with a little flavor text mentioned to us, which we're
Right?
still waiting for. You know,
Yep.
So just being able to actually, see something that you contributed to or some idea that you came up with actually get into the game, that's huge.
For sure, for sure.
Oh, let's see. Going through and taking the next one. This one comes from Valen. He is from Croatia, so another person that we have from the other side of the Atlantic there. Just wanting to go through and say, just discovered your podcast a few weeks ago, and just in time to watch you guys hang out with Wyatt Chang. It was very insightful, and I must say that you guys are freaks in a good way, of course. He's been a huge fan of the Diablo universe ever since he played D1 on the PlayStation. Which I specifically picked this one because that was actually my first experience with Diablo as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I didn't play it on the PC. I played Diablo on the PS1. And that was my experience with it. And I was like, oh, this game is cool. I'll go back to Final Fantasy VII now. But yeah, I feel you on that one. Of your first interaction being on the PlayStation, and he just wanted to go through, and he remembers finding the grandfather being a two-handed sword that's one-handed, and how awesome that was, and was just wanting to know, he wants to know, will Blizzard ever add a legendary power over to the grandfather itself? And I guess the answer to that one is yes, because they're constantly going back and touching on items that don't have abilities or affixes. So it's something that you could probably expect sometime down the road. Don't know if it's soon, a Blizzard soon, or on the radar. It's just one of those that eventually I would expect. Yes, it would get something added to it. Just probably not any time within the next couple patches.
Makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yep, and then you'll probably show this later. He sent in the item of the week.
The super secret item of the week. Yes, that definitely did make the highlights, so we'll be seeing that in a little bit. Good stuff. We got a message from Zyathis, and he was just thinking about a new show idea or a new segment for the show, which would be kind of a obituaries or a thing. I was going to say thanking of the dead. Thank you for dying. Here's your story. But yeah, it'd basically just be either us or player hopefully not us anymore, but player contributed. If you died in some terrible way or some interesting way or funny way, sending that in as feedback, and then we would have a little section where we kind of honor those who have passed on to the halls of heroes. And I think that'd be cool. It was something that Dread Scythe did do with his now defunct podcast, Scythe and Shield. So totally being awesome and just sniping that as like, hey, it's a thing that no one does anymore. We might as well take up that mantle. So if we get enough entries, I suppose we can make it a thing that will be part of the feedback and maybe its own section.
Yeah, definitely. That'd be kind of cool.
Speaker for the Dead. I like that reference.
That would bring back some painful memories there of recent times.
Indeed.
Yep. Continuing to move on, this one comes from Blizz Junkie. He wanted to know if anyone is having the same troubles with RNG and Reaper of Souls as I am. He specifically goes through and points out that he knows my issues with Tasker and Theo in the past, and that he's played a Wizard to Paragon 535 almost exclusively in softcore. He says sorry, but don't be. That's the way that you want to play. It's how you have fun. That's how you have fun. But he's never gotten a furnace to drop in all the hours that he's played the game. And he just wants to know, is the RNG weighted or slanted towards certain drops? And he understands that certain ones are meant to be rarer than others, but on the flip side, there are items that are meant to be more common. But in all the thousands of hours that he's played and no furnace, it just seems like a little strange to him. And then he goes and, this is kind of an idea that we have seen before, that it will something that just keeps track of the number of drops that you get. And so, say I found 500 hammer jammers that I can't find any more.
Best day off
Uh,
ever.
yeah, until I found 500 of every other like legendary pants. So it turns off certain legendaries because you've had so many of those drop, and it's an interesting idea. And so I guess to answer your question from the first part is yeah, RNG is weighted very much so in the drops of a lot of items. Especially, they actually buffed them in 2.1.2. They used to be, it was like 1 to 10, you'd get 10 common legendaries because it was like, I think that's how it was in the system.
Something like that. Like for every
Yeah,
for every 50, you would find 10 of something else, or like there were
yeah,
different tiers.
yeah. Because it was like for every 100 like legendaries, you'd find 10. So it was like one. It was 10 to 1 in the aspect, but that doesn't necessarily meant that that 10th one that you found was a furnace. It could have been a witching hour or one of the other very rarer legendaries. And obviously numbers are numbers. You could be 1 in 100. You could be 1 in 1,000 when you're dealing with those smaller drop chances. So I have a similar story. I have a lot of played experience on all of my demon hunters. I've never found a calamity.
Mm.
But and then also I've never found a witching hour, and then this season I found four. So it's just RNG is RNG. Sometimes this goes. I have the great stories to tell from World of Warcraft, farming the Baron Rivendare's mount. It was a 1 in 100% chance to drop, and this one person in my guild gave up after 320 runs, and then just going through and like doing the math on it, that at a 1% chance to drop, that it was something ridiculous, that like even after doing 700 runs you still only have had like an 80% chance to, you only is like a total 80% chance to have seen it drop. you know
Well,
yeah, so it's just it's like one of those ones is just when you're dealing with small percentages, the variances are killer. And but yeah, just go through, keep on trucking. There's actually another email that we got from here. If you're going through and playing a wizard, I guess kind of rejoice. The furnace isn't the end all be all. We'll touch on that other email later to go into it. But yeah, there's definitely, the nice thing is you've got other options now. Although I'm sure you probably is just, I want that furnace.
mm-hmm.
You don't care, you want
You
it.
just want it
Yep.
as a matter of thing, the word,
Yep.
the phrase. The one thing I will comment on too is this is a ridiculous answer to this because it's the complaint, but I'm going to answer it with the complaint, is to say that let's say you do that implementing 500 thing, it turns off after you get 500. What if you get 500 furnaces? And it just turns them off until you find, that crush bane. You need 500
Yep.
crush banes for you see another furnace.
Yep. Ouch.
I'm just saying, it could happen.
And those 500 furnaces that you found, none of them were ancient.
Right? And they were all
Yep.
lowest rolls and all that good stuff.
Yep.
So,
Yep. So
you do have to look at both sides.
Yep. RNG does not smile upon you, and for that I am sorry.
But it will get better because you keep grinding and eventually things do come.
Eventually things will come. Yeah. As soon as you don't need it anymore, you'll go through and you'll find your ancient perfectly rolled serpent sparker, and then you'll have a furnace drop.
And yeah, so speaking of serpent sparkers, I do want to hop on this grenade of feedback that we got, because we did offer out some advice that was not the best advice.
Yep.
And we did preface it last episode by saying that we weren't wizard experts to any by any stretch of the imagination. So the things we said could have been a little bad. And actually, we got great feedback here from Rabid Shrew, who schooled us basically and said that right now attack speed is really good for the Hydras because of the change that they made to them in one of the recent patches. And so now they scale off of attack speed. They have breakpoints very similar to your sentries back in the DH Marauder days. And so having a Serpent Sparker is going to be really good for you as a one-hander, simply because you're getting A, more Hydras out, but also B, it's a faster weapon than a Furnace, any two-hander. So attack speed is definitely a concern for wizards. And so that means that Furnace will not always be your best bet. And in fact, for the builds that people are running right now, in Tal Rasha specifically, Serpent Sparker is actually BIS at this point.
Yeah. So this one is definitely on me. So that one, this is one that I screwed up, and definitely thank you, Rabbit Shrew, for coming through, and helping us out there and setting us on the right course.
Absolutely, much appreciated. Because we're going to get stuff wrong. That's just the way that it works. So we appreciate when people give us the feedback, and he did it in a kind way too. Just we all learned more here.
Oh yeah, definitely, and it's this season Leviathan's going through playing a barb and then secondarying a demon hunter. So far, I've only been playing the demon hunter. So yeah, we definitely will not have the answers to 100%, but we'll try. We'll definitely try harder in the future to kind of look into and give you better answers. And if we get it wrong, please call us out on it. We want to be knowledgeable and we want to give the right answers. And so if we give the wrong answer, the only way that we can correct that is to be told.
Absolutely. Well said, good sir. There was another one too that I wanted to take, if you don't mind, just piggyback onto one.
By all means.
All right. This one, oh man, now I'm forgetting. Oh yes. This one came in from Scott, aka Sima. He wanted to say a few different things. First was a thank you just for our enthusiasm about the game and all the details and things that we go into. It's a kind of a counter there a little bit. But he's just very happy that, we throw out the things that we do in terms of the segments and everything. And it's actually helped to get him and his two sons, one's 7, one's 14, to have Diablo as their family game. So they actually play together all the time and they enjoy it quite a bit. And they listen to the podcast while they play. So thank you for listening and using that soundtrack to help you guys get through slaying demons. Love it. He wanted to then pose a question to us on re-rolling. This is actually kind of funny and also sad to the person that just submitted that one on the RNG because this person finally did find that ancient furnace. It was on his barb, and he's super stoked about it. He has had bad beats of RNG, but now this is a bit of a turnaround on that. And so he wanted to know let me see here. He didn't re-roll anything because he didn't have a Ramaladni's gift, and he was just wondering if furnaces are good for barbs right now. And as a barb, to speak to that, not really. The sad answer is unfortunately not really right now. Unless you're running Raycore, that's probably going to still be where it's BIS. Just the new builds that are out there, you're going to be using an IK Boulder Breaker if you're shooting for like the best of the best builds, basically. So you need to work that in, and that takes up your two-hander, that takes up your weapon slot, unfortunately. You could do some I was just gonna say you could do some things with a mix of like Raycore and IK, which is a build I kind of tried to make work in the PTR. But even still, at that point, you kind of want to leverage the IK Boulder Breaker because it gives you more flexibility for gearing. But you can fit a furnace into it, so if you wanted to kind of go for that route, that's another way to leverage it. But you need to use a Ring of Rogrander at that point. And then the last thing, there was another piece here, was he wanted to talk about Rend. It got a huge sorry, I'm running out of like stamina for speaking right now. Rend got a great buff in the Wrath of the Waste set where the 2-piece bonus makes it have its damage increased by 500%. So it just does a ton, and it lasts for 15 seconds too. So it's a ton more damage, and it sticks around for much longer. And he was wondering with his Lamentation that he got, which allows him to apply Rend twice to any enemy, if this is something that people are doing and why he doesn't see it more often and whatnot. And it's a good 2-piece bonus for sure. Like, it definitely will help you kind of move on the dot and go kind of playstyle, which is like you throw the dot down and you can leave because it's going to kill stuff, especially if it's like T6 or whatever, and you have a strong two-hander like the Furnace or something to that degree. You can dot them up and then, go on your merry way, especially if you're using like a Pain Enhancer and a Gem of Efficacious Toxin. Like, all those dots will just be ticking, so you can kind of run forward. But the reason that you're not going to see it used, especially with Lamentation, is that it kind of all boils back down to the IK set. The IK set is really good, and it has pieces of it that don't overlap with other sets. So you can leverage the belt slot and the weapon slot with the IK bonuses. So you're using your IK Treble Binding and your IK Boulder Breaker to kind of get more bonuses out of it while also wearing the Wrath of the Waste set. And so that means your belt slot will unfortunately not be able to afford a Lamentation. And then eventually too, like once you go up in higher greater rifts, like the rend is like the nice to have, but it's not what's primarily doing all your damage. So you are gonna kind of want to buff up the tornadoes, the physical damage, the other parts of the build. And that is the barb lesson for the day. So definitely stoked that you're getting the good RNG. You got, the furnace and stuff, and hopefully that translates into getting more of those Wrath of the Waste pieces for you and moving into some different builds.
Yeah, definitely. Going through and moving on. This one, sup fellas. It's your Iron Wolf in the Desolate Sands. We got Psycho going through and giving us another update out from his deployment. He just has the odd thought. You have Sergeant Psycho, and now you have Lieutenant Lunatic. He's starting to notice a theme here of people going through, writing in, and joining the team. And he just primarily wanted to go through, and he's slowly catching up on our episodes. He just caught the Wyatt Chang one, and now his biggest question is, what is he going to be able to do, and will he be able to use all of his trial keystones by the time that change comes around, and that they're not all wasted. But he wanted to go through, and his last email to us wanted to get some suggestions for what books he should read. He just finished the Diablo Archive, which is the series of novels, like the first 3 novels and the 1 ebook that got published for the Diablo storyline. And he has the other books, which he has sitting that he hasn't gotten to yet. And he wanted to mention that he's never felt more connected to or ached for the characters that have been portrayed in a book as the main characters in those 4 stories. Norik from Legacy of Blood, Derek from The Black Road, Kentrell from Kingdom of Shadow, and then Sigurd from Demon's Bane, which is the 4 books in that novel. And that, to him, it's like he could really feel the pain and the loss that they came across during all those books, because the stories, it's Diablo. You don't really have a happy ending. Sure, the good guys won, but at what cost? A lot of times at the end of those books. And so they appear to be painted in more like realistic colors for how their characters were. And he felt that it was really good, like the way that the circumstances are for the characters, in particular Derek in The Black Road and Sigurd in Demon's Bane, and that they really pose the eternal question is, what would you do if you were in this situation? And it's like what it means to be like a good human, or a Nephilim, from going from his last email. And it just he's going through and just mentioning, as for his time in the sands, the grind is real, and he wished that winter was coming, but it is not this day. And just wish us good luck. So yeah, thanks for your feedback there, Psycho. I'm glad that you liked the books, and I can't wait until you get into Moon of the Spider, because that was actually one of my favorite books there.
Nice. Those are all still on my list. I'm really bad about reading things these days. So yeah, keep up the good work out in the sands. I have one here that's coming in from Victor. And I understand that he's a European listener, and he actually came over from the EU server to the US server to come and party up with some of the people in the clan and whatnot. But he says "stop, fellows" to start his email, which to me is just like, all right, shut down the podcast. Just stop. Stop it. Mm-hmm. But jokes aside, he just wants to comment. He says he doesn't have a question or a contribution for the show, although this is a contribution. He's wondering about the Wizard Unstable Anomaly passive. Doesn't like it. He said he played on a monk for season 2, and he died a couple of times just because the overkill of damage with that passive going off, it didn't save him. It was one of the ones that was addressed with this latest patch. But it had a lot of spotlight on it from monks that just were foregoing it just because it was that bad. It didn't operate nearly as well as many of the other cheat death passes. And so Victor kind of feels the same way about Unstable Anomaly, that it just doesn't do enough and is kind of the least useful of all of them. This is something that we kind of did talk about, or at least we heard discussions on previously, where they want all the passives, the cheat death passives in particular, to feel different from class to class. Like, they all can't just do the same thing, because that's, takes out the fantasy. It's kind of boring. I think the wizard one is kind of cool in that it actually activates a skill, because we've talked about this in the past, where, like, the demon hunter one kind of activates that smoke screen. The crusader one kind of gives you the shield that you get when you use laws of hope with wings of valor, or wings of angels. And so
Witch Doctor is Spirit Walk.
Exactly. And so for the wizards here, they actually use their wave of force to blow back all the enemies when they do hit that death, and then pop back up to, I believe, 35% health. But I guess he's feeling that, like, at that point you're still just on your way to dying, because I think you only get like a second or two of immunity as a wizard. This is, again, failing at wizard stuff. What a surprise.
Yeah, actually, I think one of the biggest reasons, I don't remember if they changed it in this patch, but it's they didn't actually get any immunity whatsoever previously. I'll go through and just check it real quick. That was the big one.
Okay, if that is
it has no immunity. It's just a 45% heal and a 60% slow for 3 seconds to anything hit by your wave.
So perfect then. That kind of in itself shows why it's not nearly as good as many of the others, because they do get that kind of immunity timing, or that super damage reduction like the barb gets now, that gives you a little bit of breathing room to get out of a bad situation. If you're kind of stuck as a wizard in a bad sitch, you're probably going to die in a bad sitch after that passive goes off. So definitely a notable commentary. So we'll see if it changes. And there was a second part to this, and this is something I alluded to previous at the beginning of the show. Said maybe something that we could talk about is barbs in T6 regular rifts. It's difficult to follow barbs is the comment, and he kind of says, on and on, like you could continue to talk about this if you want to. And I was actually, just before the show started, reading a Reddit post that was saying the exact same thing. So this, I'm sure, is going to bubble up to the surface in the coming days, of people being once again upset at the barbs. And someone actually dragged up the reasoning on why they changed Raycore from what it was with the pull, and they were taking all the enemies with them, and was saying, like, well, if they thought that was disruptive gameplay and it wasn't good and that's why they changed it, then why are barbs able to just run through the whole rift by themselves, and yada yada. And it's a little different because they're not taking all the enemies with them, but they do have one of the fastest movement speeds when you add up everything that they can do, rivaled by the Ingium build for monks, because once they kind of activate their dashing strike forever thing, like, good luck keeping up. Barbs can't keep up with them. So there's definitely cause for concern, because I've been playing with some of the people in the clan, and I feel like people don't like grouping with me. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. I feel like we do a couple of rifts and everyone's like, all right, I kind of got to go. I got to do. I'm like, but we were having so much fun.
We were having so much fun, you say, when you're like three rift levels ahead of everybody else.
I get it.
It's like, we'll just teleport to you and pick up the legendaries as the stars drop on the map, because that's all we see.
I get it. Like, it sucks to not be part of the fun, and that's why I've always been against the being carried feeling. It's like, hey, I'm in T6 and you're maybe only T3 capable. Let me just carry you through, get you some items, because you're not doing anything. You really are just picking up the loot. So I can definitely see that. I just don't, like, how do you change it? Like, other classes have movement skills. It's just that their movement skills don't also do damage at the same time.
Yeah, or they'll be, resource limited. Yeah, which is not something that you really have to worry about so much with the barb, so long as you're hitting things. Everyone else just kind of like, I can't do this. It's like, I gotta stop and catch my breath here.
So I mean, it sucks, but it's a reality of things, and maybe this is that whole, like, multiplayer versus solo stuff again, and maybe if they buff solo, then all the barbs will just go to solo and you don't have to worry about it. But that's a joking answer. I will be curious to see it as it bubbles to the surface more. I don't foresee changes to skills, or like giving the barbs like less movement speed on some of the skills that increase it for them, but who knows? Could be singing a different tune by season 4.
Yeah, we'll have to see. We'll definitely have to see. This next email comes in from Ty Bud, the original Sup Fellas.
The original. It has been his first thing. It has been a minute or two, hasn't it? It has been far too long, is what it has been, sir. It's got a quick question for you. Have you heard anything about the Inna's 6-piece set bonus?
The set seems extremely underwhelming in power at the six-piece set, and it even seems that once that I achieve my six-piece set bonus, all of a sudden my wave of lights are hitting for damn near half of what they used to when I don't have the set bonus. He understands that his Mystic allies use the same abilities, but is some of their power taken to them? Is this a bug, or are my pets doing what they should be doing? Or is it something that's just best to be done by a ZDPS monk? And this one is actually something that I've not heard of before, because some of the best monk builds out there are the six-piece Innas, four-piece Sunwukos. Seems to be, like some of the big builds going on out there. So that one, I honestly don't know. I don't think that there's any bugs going on there.
Yeah, nothing that I've seen. This might be a case where it's a good opportunity to send in a link to a profile and maybe do like an analysis of kind of what's going on with your gear, what's going on with just some of the changes and choices that you're making, because it could just be maybe some affixes on gear that are being changed as you put on your set pieces, and maybe you're losing some bonuses that you had previously. So
Yeah,
it could be negatively affecting your output.
yeah, is the damage that you're losing on the character sheet the reason why that it's going through and not hitting as much, or maybe is it the allies damage that you're seeing and not your own? Because I don't know, maybe the ally doesn't hit for as hard.
Yeah, they don't, and that's part of it. But again, like if you're seeing only that, you shouldn't be only see, because if you're seeing numbers at all, you should definitely see your own and your allies as well.
Yeah, and then someone in the chat just said that the Mystic allies hit weaker than you. But yeah, definitely he's going through and saying that your normal skills should never hit weaker. That you might just be seeing your allies crits, but your Mystic allies will never hit for as much damage as you do. So yeah, there you go.
Indeed.
Yeah, there's something wrong with your eyes, Ty. Sorry.
And one of the last ones that I wanted to cover is a reroll question. And this is semi-barp specific. I'll bring it up here on the screen. It's a Countess Julia's cameo that was submitted by Mad Hamster, or infamous Hamstergram sender.
Our Hamstergrams?
Yeah. And so his question, as you can see on the screen, and maybe as you can't see if you're listening, it's a Countess Julia's cameo. He rolled off the main stat to get 99 percent critical hit damage increase, and then there's the attack speed increase by 5%, and a native critical hit chance increase by 10% with a socket on there as well. And so his question is, should I re-roll the critical hit damage for percent elemental damage for my season 3 barb? And so I saw when this one came in, and I thought about it for a little bit, and I want to say no for two reasons. I think it's tough, because if you're not using a certain setup, then maybe the answer changes. But and he actually has a pain enhancer socketed in here, so that kind of helps to push my first reason forward, is if you're going to be using a gem that procs itself off of critical hit chance, then you're going to want to have corresponding critical hit damage, because they're going to work in tandem to just elevate your damage output. So it wouldn't really make sense to use a pain enhancer that needs to have critical hits to do its work if you're not also going to have the critical hit damage that benefits from having the higher critical hit chance. If you don't use Pain Enhancer, and I think that is one of the main gems that people are using with the physical version of kind of the 6-piece Wrath, 4-piece IK, then there's probably a potential to think about Thunder, Lightning percent here, because I know some variations of the build might go in the direction of Lightning to utilize the Together as One rune on the Call of the Ancients, which reduces some damage for you. But for the most part, I think you're going to be better off with the critical hit damage here. I don't know if you have anything else that I haven't thought of with this one, Nineball.
Yeah, I'm going through and seeing if I can find a calculator, because there are some guides out there. I mean, critical hit damage is like one of your biggest damage increases. But it all kind of comes down to, it's not just 100% more critical hit damage. If you already have 500% crit damage, this is only a 20% increase. And if you have 0 elemental damage and all of your damage is fire, adding, like the 20% fire damage is also a 20% increase.
Mm-hmm.
That type of thing. That is just it kind of comes down to numbers. I wish I could find a calculator easy as I'm going through and searching around. Though I'm just given how high your crit damage has to be without factoring in the amulet. I'll probably say that the crit damage is going to be best on this.
That's yeah, my leaning as well too.
Yeah, just because it's hard because you have to have an insane amount of crit damage on all the rest of your gear for the 100% on the amulet to not be worth more than the 20% elemental damage. And even then, you have to have 0% elemental damage on the rest of your gear as well
to get the true 20% increase.
Yep.
Yeah, it's things to consider, but that calculators definitely help answer these questions. There is a lot of theory crafting you can do, but at the end of the day, the numbers kind of rule the answer. So,
yeah, and this also kind of goes back to a question that I got on Twitter this last week from Sean. He wanted to know what the best way to re-roll one of his weapons was, because he found like an ancient Doneta's and he wanted to know what the best way to re-roll it. And it's like, well, going through and looking at it, it's like, oh, you just want to re-roll the weapon damage because that will give you more than going and adding the 10% damage bonus. So, like re-rolling the damage affix, then adding on the 10% damage bonus. But then it's like, hold on, I put it into the calculator and the damage was like 30 damage or something like that. So it's just it weapon damage, re-rolling the base damage will be more, though the amount of times and mats that you're going to actually going through to get that better roll as opposed to just going and getting the 10% damage, they're really close. So it's up to you at that point how much you want to go and worry about re-rolling it. Yeah. And then the advice was all for naught because then he found a Kreider shot. GG.
I ran into a similar issue too because I managed to replace my ancient IK Boulder Breaker last night as I was doing a Greater Rift. And it rolled decently, but it was really low base damage for an ancient weapon. And I think I would have gotten more out of it looking back on the choice that I made by just re-rolling the base. But it had an affix that was just like going to be completely useless. So it made sense to me to take off the useless affix because I'm still going to have a base damage. Like it's just not going to be as high as it potentially could be. And put the 10% on there. And that way I felt like I would be leveraging all my affixes better versus, making the damage on it higher. And to this point, I still don't even know if it was the right choice, but it just seemed to kind of make sense in terms of utilizing everything on the weapon as best as I could. And it kind of gives me an option to go back and change that affix if I ever want, if I decide like, I don't even care about the damage, I just want like another utility thing on here. Versus if I roll the base damage, if you try and go to a different affix, like it'll drop to like 300 DPS or something, So sometimes considering what you re-roll based on future needs or whatever can also make a difference.
Yep.
But talking about items, are we ready to move into items of the week?
Yeah, we are.
All right.
And going through, I think I found a calculator here.
Okay.
I would still need to know. I'd still have to see the rest of his character in order to actually put the stats in and see for certain. But yeah, it's like you have to have like 0% elemental damage and somewhere near 400% critical hit damage without that item in order for it to be equivalent.
And it is possible for barbs if they're going with the the one-hander, the BK mighty weapons, for instance, because then you get two.
And then you have double emeralds.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
that definitely is one. If you will be able to better answer that if you send us a link to your gear.
There it is.
Mm-hmm.
Which you did in chat, but
there we go.
For the interest of moving the show forward.
Yeah, you go through and show those items, and I'm going to go and tweak with numbers.
All right. So I'm going to move to the items of the week, and we got quite a few, so I actually had to limit them this week. Thank you guys so much for doing some crazy farming this season. It's clearly paying off. We'll start out with our mandatory ancient furnace that we received. This one came in from Power Axes, and he literally said, like, here is your ancient furnace for this week. You better show it, or something to that degree. So here she is. It's got 4,158 DPS. He rerolled attack speed on here, interestingly enough. It is an intelligence furnace. He's got 1,324 int on there. And then a life per hit affix, 33,115 to be specific. His legendary power with the increased damage against elites is 42%, so a little on the low side. And the secondary is granting some experience on monster kill. So, that'll be helpful inside of those greater rifts. And then, of course, the good old Happy Meal, making this weapon very happy by feeding it and getting a socket in return. So thank you, Power Axis, for submitting this to us. I'm going to assume this is probably for a pet witch doctor that maybe hasn't found like a star medal or something yet, since the attack speed would help with getting those peeps to attack a little faster.
Yeah, definitely. It's a nice fill-in for that, although the furnace still does very well if you're playing Jade.
Truth.
Yeah, but even at that point, you don't really care about attack speed all that much.
This is also true.
Yep. For that, it would, if you are running Jade and using a furnace, you'd want cooldown reduction.
There you go. You have options, Mr. Power Axis.
Yep.
As long as you don't die with this.
Yeah, as long as you don't die with it.
All right, we're gonna move next to a tweet submission. This was from @Osmodius, which I'm probably murdering, but I actually know him from the Ink Gamer days. He appears on some of their podcasts as well. I've played with him in a couple of games back in the day, maybe like Season 1 or even before Seasons were a thing. But he submitted an Ancient Blade of Prophecy, and I felt really bad because this is an amazing Ancient Blade, but it's just one season too late. Because Crusaders are on, they're moving over to that Roland set, and Blade is not going to do much for you over there. But we will still highlight this because it is awesome. So it's 4,135.5 DPS. Nothing re-rolled on this yet, by the way. He has a 6% damage affix on there, 1,386 vitality, a perfect 10% cooldown reduction, and then the secondary, as you know, the 2 condemns coming from 1 condemn, and then the other secondary here is life after each kill, 14,000, looks like 983. And the most obvious thing to do here is to take that Vit and turn it into strength.
Yeah.
Got a good weapon on hand.
Yep, throw on a Happy Meal.
Throw on a Happy Meal and you'll be happy.
Yep. Before we go on to the next item, Mad Hamster went through, did the numbers, and yeah, the critical hit damage for what your character stats are, it is above and beyond better than elemental percentage.
Boom. Nailed it. I like that long form, kind of taking something from, a point in the show, and we got to the answer at the end.
Yep, there we go.
I like it, following through. So there it is. Next up on the screen here, we have a Restraint, just a regular old Restraint. But man, these rings, Restraint and Focus, are seeing a lot of play right now in seasons and in non-seasons too, just because that rework to their power is absolutely awesome. We should talk about that at some point. I think we have we scraped the surface on it, but we should maybe do like a full segment at some point.
Oh, yeah.
But this is from Dark Mage, and he was super elated because he's had a Focus forever, but never any Restraint. He's very, very focused on finding a Restraint.
Yep.
But he got this one, and it's a beaut. Nothing re-rolled on it yet, and he's got 466 dex, 49% critical hit damage, a perfect 6% critical hit chance, and then on secondaries, he's got some poison resistance, 141, and then some extra gold from monsters, because who doesn't always need more gold? And of course, there's a socket on here, which he has a Bane of the Trapped in. So I'm thinking some DH action is going down here.
Yeah, for a DH, the dexterity, it depends on what build that you want to do. If you want to do Natalia's, that dexterity should become cooldown reduction.
There you go. And then you'll be on your way. Coming up next, Flying D. Watch out for that D. It's flying towards you. I'm so sorry.
Are you talking about the same thing anymore?
I am so sorry. This show just got R-rated. Hide your kids, hide your wife. Anyway, before this gets any more awkward, this is Valen's flying dragon that that Nineball was hinting at from his email earlier in the feedback section. It's ancient, 4,376.3 DPS on it. He rerolled 10% damage affix. It's got 1,364 dex, 1,419 vitality, and secondary of 27 max spirit. additional. And the legendary power on this, for those who aren't familiar, a chance to double your attack speed when attacking. And he did use a Happy Meal on here to get a Sagat. One of the things that I wanted to offer up here is that I've noticed monks have really good damage output at this point with the Dashing Strike build, and this is one of the best in slot weapons, if not the best in slot weapon for the new Dashing Strike meta that they're experiencing right now. Apparently the damage is really good, but some of the sustainability of the build isn't quite there. So what's been a common thing to do is actually roll something like a life per spirit spent or a life per hit onto your flying dragon, actually, as one of the affixes, to kind of get you staying in the battle. Because when that legendary power ramps up, like, you can Dashing Strike so much, and that Dashing Strike outputs crazy numbers. So as long as you can stay alive to do it. Dead DPS is bad DPS or something like that.
Yep. You can't DPS when you're dead.
That's right. But either way, amazing weapon. Thank you for submitting that, Valen. We're moving along. We have a couple more. This is our ancient Ring of Royal Grandeur that was submitted via Twitter from @DarkGarage. If your garage is dark, you just turn on the light, man.
Even the garage door openers, they've got a little light when the motor starts running.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
There's so many ways. In any case, this is a great piece of jewelry that he has found for himself. Again, ancient, so it's got 627 strength, 6% attack speed increase, which is one of those mandatory affixes that comes with. He got a perfect 50% critical hit damage increase, and he rolled off the other mandatory one that comes on there, which is the life per hit.
Fun hit. Yep.
Yeah, put that into a socket. He's got a Taiguk in there that is unranked, kind of crazy. And then the secondary is 209 physical resistance, and everyone's familiar with what the Ring of Royal Grandeur does, so this is pretty sweet. And with the Taiguk in there, it seems to me it's going to be a barb, although I could imagine working that into the Crusader playstyle too. So with Roland's, that is, it's definitely a staple in Condemn. But congrats on that. It's pretty crazy. He actually got a reply from the Diablo account that was saying that this is an awesome item, so you know you're validated when Diablo himself is saying you have a good item.
Yep.
On next, in continuing the vein of the popularity of barbs, we have an Immortal King's Boulder Breaker that is ancient, and this one's actually a submission from Mad Hamster, so he's appearing again all over the place. This one has 3,901.7 DPS with nothing yet re-rolled onto it. He's got 1,302 strength, 1,368 vitality, and the Call of the Ancients damage, it ranges from 45 to 60%. He's got a 49% increased damage on this one. And the secondaries, it always comes with ignores durability loss, and then his other secondary is 21 plus maximum fury. And it does come with 5 affixes, so he rolled one of them into a socket, and I recall the email said that he would roll that socket into something else, likely that 10% damage affix, when he gets a Ronald McDonald's Happy Meal gift. So not too shabby. Lots of potential here. It's got a really high base damage roll, 1793 to 2230. I think goes like to high 1800 and low 2300. So it's pretty solid range.
Very nice.
Yeah. I am jelly. And that was it. Wait,
there
that
we
can't
are.
be it.
Uh-oh.
Oh, there was one other item that I actually... Let me finagle this, because it was a beautiful... what is it called? Corrupted Ashbringer. And I guess the image file probably didn't translate to XSplit here. So I'm just going to hop into the email that sent it over and show it to you guys here. It's not going to be the best, but we will make it work. Let me just set it up real quick. If you want to say something cool, that would be
cool. Yeah.
Cool. All right, I've got it up on screen. Thank you for that intermission there, 9ball. Really appreciate that.
Always count on me.
So Cristiano sent in this Corrupted Ashbringer that is just bananas. It's an ancient one with 4,688 DPS. It's being bolstered by an increased attack speed affix by 7%, which is the max on that. He rolled a 10% damage affix onto there. 1,309 intelligence, and then some of the other things that come with it, 10% damage to undead, and some life after each kill, 15,487. And unfortunately, His percent for the when it transforms is a little low. It ranges from 5,000 to 6,000, and
Yep.
this one's only 5,000, 25%. So scraping the bottom of the barrel, but still an amazing damage roll on here. So
Yeah. I wonder if they'll ever let you, like in the future, like re-roll your legendary affix.
that would be compelling.
What happens if you have like the item roll like perfectly, but then your actual the legendary property itself rolled horribly. You
Right.
know, it's like you have nothing to re-roll on it. It's kind of like, well, do I re-roll like a secondary stat or something, or I'd love to be able to re-roll that affix, in order to get up to like the 6,000 damage or something along those lines.
Maybe this is even where they introduce a new gift, the gift of legendary affix rerolling, name pending. And
Name. I
obviously,
like it.
yeah, thank you. Obviously, it wouldn't work for all of them because, like, for instance, the Flying Dragon doesn't have a modifier in terms of its percentage or anything like that. But it could be cool for the ones that do. Just something to make the gearing game a little more compelling.
Yeah.
But that's it, man. We got through the items. They were insane. Keep them coming, people. Westmarch Workshop at BlizzPro.com for the feedback, items, anything that you want to get off your chest. Crazy designs for plans on sets or things that you have. Love to see that stuff. You can also tweet at us, the WM Workshop. We are actively monitoring that at all times. And obviously we do pull items and things from there too. So wherever you guys feel like sounding off, do it.
Yeah, let us know. Let your voice be heard, and of course you can go through and if you want to chat with us directly, you can always catch us. I'm at Nineball Gamer on Twitter, and Leviathan is at SAStewart111.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yep.
And yeah, I guess we're wrapping things up here. So, Mr. Nineball, thoughts, feelings, questions?
Feeling good, feeling good. It's like one of those ones. Have accomplished a lot in the season so far, and still have a couple more months ahead of us.
Yeah, the sky's the limit, really.
Yeah, pretty much. How far can you take it?
Absolutely. After getting the Conquests, it was like a breath of, I don't even know, a sigh of relief. Just because it felt like we were going so like hard, like go, go, go. We gotta, because the Conquests are those things where it's like you want to get as high on those leaderboards because the spots are so limited. When you feel like you really need to push the start of that season. But then once it's done, you kind of sit back, you're like, all right, it's vacation
Now you can do
time.
whatever you want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like, level up some gems, play with some alts, take a day off. What?
Yeah. Well, what do we do now? Now we play the game, Kyle. Now we play the game.
There it is, man. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to just kind of messing around now. Did start tinkering on the DH a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm liking it. So I want to definitely get Nats going and rival you with some crazy strafing and things like that.
It's a fun build, but it gives you carpal tunnel.
Oh boy.
Yep.
Gonna have to get the old wrist ready.
Mm-hmm.
Before that goes anywhere dirty, I'm just gonna go ahead and start the outro music. Thank you,
It didn't
guys.
become dirty till you mentioned it.
Yeah, sometimes that happens.
Yeah, sometimes.
But thank you guys so much for joining us on another lovely episode of the Westmarch Workshop. We're so happy to have you here in chat, and for those of you that aren't here right now or in the future when you're on the next show, please feel free to join us. It's every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, and that's located at twitch.tv/Leviathan111. If you want to catch just the video VOD, you don't got, ain't nobody got time to hang out with you guys for 2 hours on a Wednesday night, then go ahead and catch that on YouTube. That's SAStewart1 and the BlizzPro account. It gets cross-posted to both. We, of course, have our beautiful audio versions that Nineball takes care of. They go iTunes and Stitcher. We have the in-game community right now that's been buzzing and hopping. People sharing keys, sharing bounty caches. So definitely feel free to join there for a little leg up on your characters. That's Westmarch Workshop in-game, both here and in the EU as well.
Yep.
Other than that, I got nothing else for you guys. I want to go grind.
Yeah. Yeah. Or we should probably start pushing the raid call so people can just come hang out and chat, whether you're in the clan or not.
Absolutely. You know what? That would be great. And I should have those numbers offhand, but I don't.
Next time.
On Westmarch
Gadget.
Workshop.
Next time.
Tune in for all the goodies.